Okay, this is the second video segment on the solution of homework assignment number 6. So I'm going to be concentrating on these type of problems where it says that, okay, since these are not standard angles that we have memorized, go ahead and use your calculator to find the value. Now, just a word of caution here is that because we are doing sine inverse, at this point, that we haven't really discussed anything about degrees, we will do that in chapter 3. Uh, we're talking about the answer being in radians. So the first thing that you do is make sure that when you do these things, you set your angle to radian. Okay, so let me go to my calculator here. Right there. Okay. Now let me see. The mode. Okay, notice that mine is for angle, it's already in radian here. I don't have to change it. Okay, this is already in radians. Never mind. Okay, so let's go back. Let's go back. All right, erase this, clear that. So we want the problem number 11 is the sine inverse of 2/3. Okay, so where is the sine inverse? Sine inverse is right above sine. See that? This is the sine. Okay, so second function, click on the sine button, but of course that's going to take you to the sine inverse because sine inverse is the second button. Now 2/3, 2 divided by 3. Hit return. There we are, 0.72972. Let's try the next one, which is number 12. Once again, second function, right here, second function, sine inverse. Oops, clear this. Okay, second function, click on the sine, which is going to pick the sine inverse for you. And what have we got? This is number 12, so it's going to be negative. Now remember, negative is this button. This, negative, I'm sure you know that, 8/9. And I think you hit enter, it's going to spit out the value for you right there. I really should have closed this, but it doesn't matter. Now these are in radians. Incidentally, if you want to know what fraction of pi it is, for example, just look at this. Just look at this. So this is almost 3 pi. So let's check this answer. Divide this by pi. Divide this by pi. Now where's pi? Right there. Second function, pi. Enter. So it's this is 0.34 pi. So this answer that we got, this is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just that if you want to know in terms of pi what it is, it's going to be minus 0.348 pi. All right, let's do number 15. So second function, cos inverse, which is right here. The cos button, second function of it is cos inverse, and it's going to be negative. There's your negative. 0.9272761, and you close it and enter, and there we are. I just want to point out to you, by the way, well, that's okay. Let's move on. Let's move on to number 16. 16, that says 16 is sine inverse. So second function, sine inverse, 0.0.1313844, and enter. There we are. Number 17 is tan inverse of 10. By the way, let me try something. So we go second function, sine inverse of, I don't know, 1.5. It's going to give you an error message because sine inverse, you cannot take sine inverse of a number that's bigger than 1 or less than -1. You see, it just doesn't make sense. Now, how do we get out of this? Quit. I guess 1 is going to quit. Okay, good. Let's do number 17, tan inverse, second function, tan inverse of 10. For tan inverse, you can put anything you want. It's not going to complain. Right there. And finally, tan inverse of -26, second function, tan inverse of negative, there is your negative, 26. Let's spit out the numbers. Okay, so, well, you should be able to do these. These are routine problems, so never mind. But the next set of problems, they are a little bit longer and harder, and I'm going to spend a lot of time on it, okay? So let me stop this. Actually, let me go ahead and continue doing it here. So where is your homework? So I'm working with these other problems. So let me start with 23. Look, it says, don't put this in your calculator. Give me the exact value if actually you can do it. So let's concentrate on 23. Okay. So 23, it says, what is sine of sine inverse of 1/4? Okay. So with these problems, what we're going to do is, by the way, I want to remind you that we had a setup. We had some identities here. Look, remember sine of sine inverse of x was x as long as x was between 1 and -1. Do you remember that? And sine of sine inverse of sine of x was equal to x as long as x was between pi over 2 and minus pi over 2. I want to remind you about the review session that I had before doing these problems, and I wrote these things for you. So the answer is, because I'm putting a 1/4 here, the answer is 1/4. Let's do number 24. We have cosine of cosine inverse of 2/3. We had corresponding things for cosine. So cosine of cosine inverse of x was equal to x as long as x was between 1 and -1. And cos inverse of cos of x was equal to x as long as x was between pi less than or equal to pi or equal to bigger or equal to 0. So this one, the one that we're asked to do, is actually fits in that description. So that is 2/3. Okay, let's do number 25. It says tan of tan inverse of 5. In that same review session, we also had tan inverse of x. This is equal to x for any x. And tan inverse tan of x is also equal to x as long as x is between, not equal to, between pi over 2 and minus pi over 2. Okay, so this one actually uses that guy, and the answer is 5. Let me do sine of sine inverse. Next one, number 26. We have sine inverse of 5. This is garbage, because there is no way you can take sine inverse of something that's bigger than 1. Okay, let's go to number 27. 27. Sine of sine inverse of 3 over 2. Garbage. There's no way you can take sine inverse of something that's bigger than 1. 28. Tan inverse of 3 over 2. Just look at what I did a second ago, a few seconds ago. This is always equal to 3 over 2, irrespective of what you put in there. Okay? That was 28. Let's go to 29. This is going faster than I thought. So cos inverse of cos of 5 pi over 6. Okay? Now, if you go back here, right here, I wrote the stuff for cos inverse cos of x, as long as the answer is going to be x, as long as x is between 0 and pi. So let's go back here. This thing is between 0 and pi, so right off the bat, 5 pi over 6. This 5 pi over 6 is between pi and 0, and therefore we can use that identity that I wrote down. Number 30th, tan inverse of tan of pi over 4. Okay? Let me remind you what we said about tan. See, as long as the thing that you give me is between pi over 2 and minus pi over 2, then this is going to be equal to x. So here, this number is between plus pi over 2 and minus pi over 2, and this is pi over 4. Let's do another one. What is this? Home insert. A new slide. Okay. We need 2 more problems. I think that'll do enough of it. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this one. This is number 31. It says sine inverse of sine of negative pi over 6. Okay, let me remind you that as long as the thing that you put in there, as long as the thing that you put in there is between pi over 2 and minus pi over 2, this is true. And the number that we had here was actually minus pi over 6. That happens to be right here. Minus pi over 6 is in this range, and therefore this is minus pi over 6. Well, you know what? Let's go ahead and check this thing. Let's go ahead and check this thing. I'm going to go back to my calculator here, and I'm going to put sine of second function, sine inverse, negative pi over 6. Now here's pi. Where's pi? Second function pi divided by 6, close the parentheses, and close the parentheses. What I said, this is negative pi over 6. So let's find out what the calculator will tell us. Well, first of all, the negative is obvious. So let me do negative pi over 6. I better get that same number. Pi divided by 6, and I better get minus 0.52. Yes, I do. So what we did here was correct. The last problem is number 32. We have tan inverse of tan of minus pi over 4. And if you look at what I said about tan inverse tan, This is equal to x as long as x is between pi over 2 and minus pi over 2. And the thing that's given to us right there is in that range, so this is minus pi over 4. It may occur to you that, wait a minute, all these problems, we get the same thing that we wrote down. Well, the problem is that if this guy, for example, if this was not in that range, then this will not be minus pi over 4, and you have to go and work it out. Because as soon as you write this tan inverse of something, you should get something between minus pi over 2 and pi over 2. Okay, that wraps it up. We did all these problems, and we're good.